Welcome, everyone. I want you to listen to me very carefully today, because what I'm about to share is not just another English learning video. This is the exact way I went from freezing in conversations to speaking confidently, without even thinking in my native language first. If you've ever been in a situation where you understood the words, but your brain refused to respond, where you felt trapped between languages, where you had so much to say, but all the sentences died in your mind, then this video is for you. I know what that feels like. I know the frustration of knowing the answer in your head but saying nothing because you're scared you'll sound stupid. I know the pain of people switching to your language because they think you can't handle English. I know the nights where you replay the conversation in your mind thinking, I should have said this, I should have said that. And I also know something else. You can change it. You can reprogram your brain so that English is not just something you study, but something you think in. When that happens, you don't pause to translate. You don't search for words. You speak naturally without hesitation, like it's your first language. Today, I'm not just going to tell you how to do it. I'm going to take you through my own journey. From the day I hit my breaking point, to the moment I could have real conversations without fear. I'll share the small techniques that changed everything for me. The things no textbook will ever teach you. By the end of this video, you will understand why thinking in English is the only way to fluency. Learn how to train your mind step by step. Know exactly what to do from the moment you wake up until you go to sleep to make English your brain's default language. And most importantly, believe that you can do it, no matter how shy, slow, or nervous you feel now. So, if you've been stuck, if you've been frustrated, if you've been wondering, will I ever speak naturally? Stay with me. Because this is the video that will finally give you the breakthrough you've been waiting for. Chapter 1. The Breaking Point. My name is Daniel Carter. I'm 25 years old, and this is the story of how I finally started thinking and speaking in English. I grew up in a small town in Spain. My English wasn't terrible. I could understand movies with subtitles. I could pass school exams. But speaking, that was my nightmare. The problem wasn't vocabulary. It wasn't grammar. It was my brain. Every time I tried to speak, my thoughts came in Spanish first. Then I had to translate them into English. And while I was translating, the conversation moved on without me. One morning at the cafe where I worked, a British couple came in. They smiled warmly. Good morning. Can we get 2 cappuccinos, please? Easy sentence. I understood every word, but my brain froze. It was like someone pressed the pause button inside my head. Spanish words started fighting with English words. By the time I opened my mouth, my hands were shaking. I mumbled, one moment, and walked away. They weren't rude. They didn't laugh. But they looked uncomfortable. And that was worse than being laughed at. I felt like I had failed them, failed my job, and failed myself. All in 10 seconds. That night, I lay in bed replaying it. The scene kept looping, their voices, my silence. I thought, this will keep happening for the rest of my life if I don't change something now. It wasn't just about cappuccinos. I had bigger dreams. My boss had told me, Daniel, we might open a cafe in London. If your English improves, I could send you there. But I knew, the way I was now, I would never get that chance. That was my breaking point. That night, I promised myself, From tomorrow, I will stop translating. I will train my brain to think in English every single day until it becomes natural. Even if it feels weird, even if people think I'm crazy, even if I make mistakes. It wasn't a casual goal. It was survival. It was my future. And that promise changed my life. Chapter 2. The Big Decision. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. I didn't know exactly how to start, but I knew one thing. If I wanted to stop translating, I had to live in English, not just study it. I sat on the edge of my bed, my heart racing like it was the first day of a new job. The promise I made to myself last night wasn't just a thought. It was a contract. If I broke it, I wasn't just losing time. I was losing the future I wanted. The first thing I did that morning was simple but powerful. I looked around my room and named everything I saw in English. Bed, pillow, blanket, window, chair. Then I added more detail. Soft pillow, blue blanket, open window, wooden chair. At first it felt slow. Sometimes I couldn't remember a word, so I had to search for it on my phone. But I didn't feel bad about it, because every time I found a word, it was like adding a new tool to my mental toolbox. When I brushed my teeth, I didn't think, Estoy cepillándome los dientes. I forced myself to think, I'm brushing my teeth. It was awkward at first. My brain kept trying to switch back to Spanish. But every time it did, I pulled it back to English. It was like training a puppy. It runs away, but you gently bring it back. Over and over. That's how you train your brain, too. On the way to work, I looked at everything. Cars, traffic lights, shops, and described them in English in my head. Red car stopping. Woman in a yellow coat crossing the street. Small bakery on the left. At first, I was only using short, simple sentences. But that was fine. I wasn't trying to be perfect. I was trying to be consistent. At work, I decided to do something uncomfortable. Whenever an English-speaking customer came in, I would force myself to greet them in English first, even if they looked surprised. I didn't wait for the perfect sentence in my head. I just said something simple. Good morning, how are you today? The first time, my voice shook. The second time, I spoke a little faster. By the third time, I noticed something amazing. The sentence came out faster than before. I didn't translate it word by word. It was just there. That's when I realized. Speed comes from habit, not from studying one phrase for hours. That night, I decided to take this even further. I wrote down a rule for myself. From now on, if I know a word in English, I will use it. Even when talking to myself, no matter how strange it feels. This rule changed everything. Because now, English wasn't something I practiced for 30 minutes. It was something I lived in all day. I also created a secret habit that became my favorite exercise. The 1-minute mind race. Here's how it worked. I would set a timer for 1 minute. I would look around me and describe everything in English without stopping. No pausing to think, no worrying about grammar. Just keep going. The goal wasn't perfection. The goal was speed and flow. Because the more you do it, the less your brain has time to translate. One evening, I tested myself. I closed my eyes and imagined making a cappuccino, step by step, but all in English in my head. Pick up the cup, add coffee, steam the milk, pour slowly, make a heart shape. I realized something important. When I imagine actions in English, speaking becomes much easier later. It's like my brain already practiced before I even said the words out loud. After only a few days of doing this, I noticed small changes. Sentences started appearing in my mind without translating. I was remembering words faster. I didn't panic as much when someone spoke English to me. It wasn't a miracle. It was work. But it was working. I wasn't fluent yet, far from it. But for the first time in my life, I could feel myself moving in the right direction. Not just studying English, but becoming someone who lives in English. And that feeling was addictive. Chapter 3. The Silent Days. After a week of living in English as much as I could, I noticed something strange. Some of my best progress wasn't happening when I was talking. It was happening in complete silence. It took me a while to understand why. When you're silent, you have space. No one is rushing you. No one is judging you. Your brain can process, experiment, and replay sentences freely. So I started using silence as my secret training ground. Morning silence practice. I would wake up, sit on my bed, and spend 5 minutes in total quiet. No phone, no music. During those 5 minutes, I would imagine a conversation in English. Sometimes it was simple. Ordering breakfast in a cafe. Asking for directions. Talking to a friend about the weather. But here's the rule I made. The conversation had to be inside my head in English only. If my brain tried to sneak in a Spanish word, I replaced it instantly with an English one, even if it wasn't perfect. This is where I discovered something powerful. When you imagine a conversation fully in English, your brain starts building faster, smoother connections between words. Later, when you speak for real, those connections are already waiting for you. One day, I was sitting at the park on my lunch break. I picked up my coffee cup and decided to tell its story in my head. In English. This is a paper cup. It's white with a brown sleeve. I bought it from the cafe across the street. The coffee smells strong. The lid is a little loose. Then I pushed it further. I made up a story. Maybe this cup came from a factory in another country. Maybe a worker packed it with hundreds of others in a big box. Maybe it traveled on a ship. Now it's here, in my hand. Why was this important? Because it stretched my English thinking beyond basic descriptions. It forced me to create, to imagine, to connect ideas, all in English. I had learned about shadowing, repeating what someone says in real time. But I discovered a silent version. I would watch English videos and move my mouth to match the speaker, but without making any sound. It sounds strange, but it trained my mouth muscles while also letting me focus on rhythm, lip shape, and speed without worrying about my voice. When I later spoke out loud, my mouth felt ready. When I was on the bus or walking down the street, I would narrate everything silently in my head. The man next to me is reading a newspaper. The driver is wearing sunglasses. The road is bumpy. The shop has a blue sign. It was like writing a book in my brain, constantly adding English sentences to match my surroundings. Over time, I didn't even have to force it. The sentences just appeared. Another powerful thing I did in these silent days. Replaying my past conversations in English, but fixing them. Example. If earlier that day I had said to a customer, "You wait one moment," I would silently replay it later as, "Could you please wait a moment?" This way, my brain got used to better sentence structures without the pressure of a live conversation. Within 2 weeks of doing this, I could think in English for several minutes without switching back to Spanish. My vocabulary was growing naturally because I was constantly searching for words to describe things. I felt calmer when speaking because my brain had already practiced in silence hundreds of times. One night, I realized something big. I was lying in bed, thinking about my day, and I noticed I was doing it entirely in English without trying. That had never happened before in my life. But I knew this was just the foundation. Silent thinking was powerful, but if I stayed silent forever, I would never truly master speaking. The next step was scarier. Taking all that silent English in my head and bringing it out into the real world, where mistakes could happen. And that step changed everything again. Chapter 4. The first out-loud attempts. After weeks of silent training, I felt like I had built a secret English world in my head. But I knew, if I kept it there forever, it would stay locked away. The next challenge was to open my mouth and let it out. And this part terrified me. Because silence is safe. Speaking is exposure. The first day I decided to speak more, I didn't aim for long conversations. I just aimed for one clear English sentence in the real world. I told myself, don't try to be perfect. Just get the words out. That morning, I was at the cafe before opening. The delivery man arrived with boxes of milk and coffee beans. Normally, I'd greet him in Spanish. But that day, I opened the door and said, "Good morning, how are you today?" It was short, simple, but it was out loud. The first thing I noticed was how different my voice sounded when speaking English. It felt slower, like my mouth was testing every sound. I realized this was because my muscles weren't used to moving in English patterns. So I decided to add mouth warm-ups before speaking, repeating tricky English sounds 5 to 10 times. Thee, like in think, this. R, like in really, right. Ending sounds like in make, hope, fast. These few minutes made my voice feel freer, my jaw more relaxed. The next step was shadowing out loud. This time, no silent lip-syncing. I matched my voice to the speaker in real time. If they spoke fast, I spoke fast. If they paused, I paused. I didn't care if I made mistakes. My focus was rhythm and flow. I started with short YouTube clips of interviews. One of my favorites was a 2-minute coffee shop conversation. I played it 10 times in a row until my voice almost matched theirs word for word. At work, I set a secret daily goal. Say at least 5 sentences in English before going home. If customers didn't give me the chance, I created the chance. Asking, "Would you like sugar?" Saying, "Your coffee will be ready in a moment," or simply, "Enjoy your drink." The first few times my voice trembled, but each time I spoke, the fear shrank a little. One afternoon, a tourist asked, "Do you know where the nearest ATM is?" Normally, I'd freeze, but I took a breath and answered, "Yes, it's across the street next to the pharmacy." She smiled and said, "Thank you." I walked back into the cafe like I had just won a gold medal. Because in that moment, I realized the conversation didn't have to be perfect to feel like progress. To make my speaking stronger, I added the 3-second rule. If someone spoke to me in English, I had only 3 seconds to reply. No time for long thinking or translation. This forced my brain to send words straight from thought to mouth. Example. Customer. "Could I get an extra spoon?" Me. "Of course, just a moment." Fast, natural, done. The more I did it, the less my sentences felt built, and the more they felt released. At home, I created out-loud narration nights. I'd choose a simple activity, making tea, cleaning my desk, and talk about it out loud in English as I did it. "I'm filling the kettle. I'm turning it on. The water is boiling now. I'm pouring it into the cup. It felt silly at first, but it connected my actions directly with English words in real time, exactly like how children learn their first language. I also recorded myself once a week. The first time, I hated my voice. It sounded slow, uncertain, and sometimes wrong, but that recording became my proof of progress. Every week, I compared it to the last one. Some mistakes stayed, but my speed and confidence kept growing. These first out-loud attempts weren't dramatic. They weren't perfect. But they were building something important. The bridge between my English thoughts and my English voice. And every time I crossed that bridge, it felt a little stronger, a little faster, a little more like home. Chapter 5. The first real conversation. I still remember the day it happened. It wasn't planned. I didn't have notes. And maybe that's why it was so important. Because real conversations don't give you time to prepare. It was a Friday afternoon at the cafe. The sun was shining and the place was busy. Tourists, locals, families. Everyone seemed to be talking at once. I was behind the counter when a man walked in. Tall, with a backpack, holding a city map. He smiled and said, "Hey, I'm looking for a good place to have dinner tonight. Any recommendations?" Normally, this is where my panic would take over. But that day, I decided. No running, no hiding, no switching to Spanish. This was my chance to see if my silent thinking and short speaking practice had prepared me for the real thing. I smiled back. Yes, there's a restaurant near the main square. They serve really good seafood." He leaned on the counter. "Oh, that sounds great. Is it expensive?" I didn't know the perfect way to say not too expensive, but I remembered my rescue strategy. Keep it simple, but keep it moving. "It's not too expensive. The food is good, and the place is beautiful at night." He nodded. "Nice. And do I need a reservation?" Reservation. That word flashed in my mind. I had learned it months ago, but never used it. This was my moment. "Yes, maybe. On weekends, many people go there. You can call them." Here's what I noticed. I wasn't speaking perfectly, but I wasn't freezing either, and my brain wasn't translating. It was just responding. He smiled. "Thanks for your help. By the way, you speak English really well." Those words. They felt like a reward for every silent practice, every nervous sentence, every early morning mouth warm-up. After he left, I replayed the conversation in my head. Not to criticize myself, but to upgrade it. Example. Instead of, "The food is good and the place is beautiful at night," I could have said, "The food is delicious and the view at night is amazing." This is something I now call conversation rebuilding. After every talk, I replay it in my head and improve my sentences so my brain is ready for next time. I also learned a huge lesson that day. The goal is not to say everything perfectly. The goal is to keep the conversation alive. If you forget a word, you can. Use a simpler synonym. Delicious. Really good. Describe it. Reservation. Call before you go. Or gesture if needed. The important thing is, don't stop talking. From that day forward, I made a new rule. One real conversation in English every day. It didn't matter if it was with a tourist, a colleague, or even online. One conversation every single day. At first, some were short, just a few lines. But over time, they got longer, faster, and more natural. Something else happened that I didn't expect. My fear started turning into excitement. When I saw an English-speaking customer walk in, I felt curious instead of nervous. I started thinking, what will I learn from this one? instead of, what if I fail? That mental shift from fear to curiosity was huge, because once you're curious, you start listening better. And the better you listen, the better you respond. That week, I had a conversation with an Australian couple about Spanish food. I didn't just answer their questions. I asked them questions back. What's your favorite Spanish dish? How long are you visiting? For the first time, I wasn't just surviving the conversation. I was enjoying it. I walked home that night with a smile. I knew I still had a long way to go. My sentences could be smoother. My vocabulary could be bigger. But I had crossed a line I thought was impossible. I could have a real, unscripted English conversation without freezing. And once you cross that line, you never want to go back. Chapter 6. Breaking the Translation Habit. After my first real conversations, I felt unstoppable for a few days. But soon, I noticed something holding me back again. It wasn't fear this time. It wasn't shyness. It was the one habit I had carried with me since I started learning English, translating in my head. Even during good conversations, I realized some of my sentences were still taking the long route in my brain. Native language, English, speak. It was faster than before, but still not instant. And I knew, as long as translation was there, I would never reach true fluency. I decided this had to end. If my brain wanted to translate, I would train it not to. Not by force, but by replacement. Step 1. Short thought training. I started with micro thoughts, 2 to 4 word sentences in English only. Instead of thinking, voy a abrir la puerta, and then translating it, I would go straight to, I'll open the door. I did this all day with tiny actions. I'm eating lunch, I'm washing my hands, I'm writing notes. Why short sentences? Because they don't give your brain time to slip into your native language. Step 2. Visual thinking in English. I stopped linking English words to my native words. Instead, I linked them directly to the object or action. Example. When I thought apple, I didn't see the Spanish word manzana in my head. I saw an actual apple, shiny, red, fresh, and connected it straight to the English sound apple. This way, there was no middle step. The English word became the first and only label in my mind. Step 3. Real-world reaction speed. I created small reaction challenges for myself. If I saw something happen around me, I had to name it in English immediately without pausing. Bus arrives? The bus is here. Child running. The boy is running. Coffee spills? The coffee spilled. At first I hesitated, but after weeks of doing this, the speed improved so much that I didn't even realize I was doing it. Step 4. Ban on mental translation. I set a strict personal rule. If I caught myself translating, I stopped mid-sentence and rebuilt it in English. Example. If my brain started with voy a tomar un descanso, I paused and thought directly in English. I'm going to take a break. At first, it slowed me down. But slowly, the direct English thinking became natural. Step 5. Rescue phrases to keep flow. One big reason people translate is because they don't know a word. So instead of stopping and translating, I trained myself to use rescue phrases. It's something that you use it for. Example. I forgot the word whisk, used in cooking, so I said, it's something you use to mix eggs quickly. The listener understood, and I didn't break the English flow. Step 6. Double listening technique. I began listening to English conversations. In movies, podcasts, or real life, and forcing myself to process them in English only. No subtitles in my native language. No mental translation. When a sentence was unclear, I didn't jump to my dictionary immediately. I replayed it in my head, guessed the meaning from context, and kept going. This built my tolerance for not understanding everything, which is essential for real fluency. Step 7. Mind merging. This was my most powerful habit. I merged my daily identity with English completely. If I was writing a shopping list, I wrote it in English. If I was daydreaming, the characters in my head spoke English. If I was thinking about my goals, I described them to myself in English. I wasn't learning English anymore. I was living in English. Within a month of doing this, something magical happened. I caught myself walking to work, thinking about a memory from last summer. And the memory was in English. The voices, the dialogue, the emotions. It felt strange at first, like my brain had switched operating systems. But then it felt freeing. This is when I realized fluency isn't about knowing every word. It's about making English the first language your brain chooses without asking. And for the first time, I felt like I was truly on the way there. Chapter 7. Speaking like you think. After I finally broke the translation habit, something new started happening. When I thought of something in English, I could say it almost instantly. But there was still a gap. My spoken sentences were simpler than the thoughts in my head. I wanted more than just good enough English. I wanted my spoken words to match the complexity, emotion, and speed of my thoughts. I began noticing this gap during conversations at the cafe. For example, a tourist once asked, "What's the best thing about living here?" In my head, I had a long, detailed answer about the smell of fresh bread in the mornings, the energy of the market, the old streets at night. But what came out of my mouth was, "It's nice. People are friendly." It wasn't wrong, but it didn't match what I really wanted to say. I decided to fix this with a new kind of training, thought-to-speech expansion. The goal was simple. Take the thought in my head and practice saying it in full, colorful English, not just the safe version. Step 1. Slow down to expand. I started by slowing my speaking speed during practice, not in real life, but when I was alone. For example, if my thought was, "The weather is nice," I'd say, "The weather is nice today because the sun is shining, the air feels fresh, and it's not too hot or cold." I trained myself to add layers, description, reason, feeling. The more layers I added, the more natural it became to speak in full thoughts instead of cutting them short. Step 2. Use connectors like glue. I realized fluent speakers don't just speak in separate sentences. They connect their ideas with words like because, so, and, but, actually, in fact. Example. Instead of, "I like this city. People are friendly," I'd say, "I like this city because people are friendly and they're always ready to help you if you need something." These connectors made my speech flow like a river instead of sounding like a list. Step 3. Speak feelings, not just facts. When someone asked me about my day, I stopped giving flat answers like, "It was good." Instead, I added how I felt and why. It was good because I had time to walk by the sea, and the sound of the waves made me feel relaxed. This gave my speech personality and made conversations more engaging. Step 4. Practice no filter. Speaking. Sometimes when we speak, we censor ourselves. We only say the safe part of our thoughts. I practiced speaking everything that came to mind, still politely, of course. For example, If I tasted a new coffee at work, I didn't just say, "It's nice." I'd say, "It's nice. It has a rich flavor, a little stronger than usual, and I can taste a hint of chocolate." The goal was to get comfortable expressing my full thought in English without cutting it down. Step 5. Copy the natural flow of natives. I started paying attention to how native speakers told stories. They didn't rush. They used pauses, changes in tone, little fillers like, "you know," or "I mean," not to waste time, but to keep the flow natural. I recorded short voice messages to myself, copying this style. It felt awkward at first, but soon my speaking sounded more relaxed and confident. Step 6. Daily real-life testing. I didn't keep this training private. Every day, I tested it with real people. When a customer asked about the weather, I'd give them my expanded version. When a friend asked about my weekend, I'd tell them the full story, not just good or busy. Sometimes they looked surprised at my long answers, but I could see they were more interested, more engaged. After a month of this, my spoken English started matching my thoughts almost perfectly. When I looked at something, my brain gave me the words. My mouth said them, and it sounded exactly like I imagined. It was no longer just thinking in English. It was living in English and speaking it in its full color. But I wasn't finished. Because even though my speaking had improved massively, I knew there was one final skill that would take me from good to truly fluent. The ability to live my entire day surrounded by English no matter where I was. And that's what came next. Chapter 8. Living in English. After I learned to speak exactly as I thought, I realized something huge. Fluency isn't just about practice sessions. It's about building an entire life that breathes English. If English only exists for 1 hour a day in your life, it will always feel foreign. But if English surrounds you from the moment you wake up until you go to sleep, it becomes your environment. It becomes your natural state. Step 1. English. From the second I wake up, the first words in my head each morning were in English, not because I forced them, but because I planned for it. Before bed, I placed sticky notes in English around my room, one on the ceiling. "Good morning." One on my mirror. "Smile, today is yours." One on my door. "Let's make it a great day." When I opened my eyes, those words were the first thing I saw, and seeing them triggered my brain to start the day in English mode. Step 2. Breakfast in English. While making breakfast, I narrated everything in English out loud. "I'm slicing bread. The butter is cold. The coffee smells strong today." I didn't care if no one was listening, because my goal wasn't to impress. It was to train my mouth to move in English naturally, even during the smallest actions. Step 3. English in my ears all day. If I wasn't talking, I was listening. Podcasts, audiobooks, YouTube interviews, not background noise, real listening. I chose topics I actually cared about: travel, food, business, so I didn't get bored. When I heard a phrase I liked, I paused, repeated it out loud, and sometimes even wrote it down. Step 4. Replacing my digital world. Every app on my phone was switched to English. Social media feeds, news, weather, even my shopping app. When you do this, something magical happens. English stops feeling like a school subject and starts feeling like your everyday language. Step 5. Talking to myself without fear. Walking to work? I'd pretend I was giving a tour of the city in English. Cooking dinner? I'd explain the recipe to an invisible friend in English. At first I felt ridiculous, But after weeks of doing this, my speaking became smoother because I was practicing in real life, not just in a quiet room with a textbook. Step 6. Real English interactions every day. I made a rule. Talk to at least one person in English daily. Tourist? Yes. Colleague who's learning English? Yes. Online video call with a stranger? Yes. Some conversations lasted 20 seconds. Some lasted 10 minutes. But the point was, English wasn't an occasional event anymore. It was part of my normal day. Step 7. Using English for real tasks. I started doing my real-life tasks in English. Searching for recipes online. Reading product reviews before buying something. Watching how-to videos for skills I wanted to learn. When you use English to actually get things done, it becomes more than a language. It becomes a tool for life. Step 8. Thinking ahead in English. I trained myself to prepare my English sentences before I needed them. Walking towards a customer? I'd plan my greeting in English. About to meet a friend? I'd think about the first question I'd ask in English. This removed hesitation because my brain was already warmed up before the conversation started. Step 9. Evening reflection in English. At the end of each day, I'd spend 10 minutes talking to myself in English about what happened. I'd go over events, feelings, mistakes, and what I learned. Sometimes I even recorded these reflections so I could listen back and see my progress. Step 10. Falling asleep in English. My final step was to end the day in English too. Before sleeping, I'd listen to a calm English audiobook or imagine a story in English in my head. Some nights, I'd replay a great conversation I had that day, word for word. By doing this, I wasn't just studying English. I was living inside it 24/7. After a few months of this, something incredible happened. I stopped switching between languages. My mind didn't need to warm up anymore. English wasn't a guest in my life. It was part of me. But I still wasn't done. Because now it was time for the stage that would make my English not just fluent, but unshakable, even in the most unexpected high-pressure situations. And that's exactly what came next. Chapter 9. The Pressure Test. Living in English had changed my daily life. It was no longer a study habit. It was my reality. But I knew something. Being fluent in your own comfortable routine is one thing. Speaking fluently under pressure, that's a different game. Why pressure matters. When you're relaxed, you have time to think. When you're under pressure, a job interview, a fast conversation, a public question, your brain can panic. And if you haven't trained for that, your fluency can disappear in seconds. I didn't want sometimes fluent. I wanted unshakable fluency. The kind that stays with you even when your heart is racing. It came unexpectedly. One morning, the cafe was full, and my boss asked me to handle a group of 6 foreign tourists, all speaking English, all ordering at once. They were talking quickly, interrupting each other, laughing, asking for changes. A few months earlier, this would have crushed me. But I took a deep breath and focused on one sentence at a time. Okay, 1 cappuccino with no sugar. Sure, 2 croissants, warm or cold? Yes, we can add extra milk to that. When you're under pressure, the key is to simplify. Don't try to be perfect or use fancy words. Keep the flow alive with short, clear sentences, and your brain will keep up. I started creating pressure drills for myself to prepare for situations like this. I'd set a timer for 1 minute and try to answer rapid-fire questions out loud without pausing. Questions like, what did you do yesterday? Describe your favorite food. Tell me how to make tea. The rule was, no silence longer than 2 seconds. I'd pick a random object, a shoe, a pen, a lamp, and speak about it in English for 1 full minute. It forced my brain to create sentences even when I wasn't ready. I'd practice speaking while the TV was on or with background cafe sounds playing. It taught me to focus on my own voice and block out distractions. A month later, my boss introduced me to a friend who owned a small hotel. She needed someone who could greet guests in English. She spoke to me directly, in English, asking about my work experience. My heart was pounding, but my mind didn't freeze. I spoke slowly, smiled, and used everything I had learned. Clear sentences, connectors, and feeling in my answers. When I walked out, she told my boss, "He's confident. I like the way he explains things." Another day, I was walking home when a lost traveler stopped me. He asked for directions to the train station, but in a heavy accent I wasn't used to. Months ago, I would have panicked. Now I listened carefully, caught the key words, and replied with a full answer. Not just go straight, but go straight for 5 minutes, then turn left after the bank. You'll see a big blue sign for the station. He understood perfectly, and I walked away realizing I wasn't just surviving under pressure. I was helping people. After enough pressure situations, something strange happened. Instead of dreading them, I started looking forward to them. I wanted more fast conversations, more unexpected questions, more situations where my brain had to work at full speed. Because every time I passed a pressure test, my English muscles grew stronger. By this point, I wasn't just learning English. I was proving to myself day after day that my English could survive in any situation. Chapter 10. The Fluent Life. It was a warm summer evening. I was standing in the lobby of a hotel in Madrid, wearing a suit instead of my cafe uniform. Months ago, I could barely take a coffee order in English without freezing. Now, I was about to speak to a room full of international guests. This wasn't a casual chat. This was the moment I had been unknowingly training for since that morning with the British couple. The day I hit my breaking point. The hotel manager approached me. "Daniel, we have some guests from Canada, the US, and the UK. They're interested in learning more about the city. Could you welcome them and give them some recommendations?" My heart raced, but not from fear. It was from excitement. I was about to speak English, freely, naturally, in front of a group. And I didn't need notes, translations, or rehearsals. They gathered in front of me, smiling, curious. I took a breath and started. "Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Madrid. I'm Daniel, and I'm so happy to see you here. Tonight, I want to share a little bit about this beautiful city. Not just the famous spots, but the hidden corners I think you'll love." I didn't just list tourist attractions. I painted pictures with my words. In the morning, you can walk through El Retiro Park. The air is fresh, the trees are alive with birds, and if you go near the lake, you'll see the sunlight dance on the water. In the afternoon, explore the local markets. Try the olives. They're salty, rich, and taste like the Spanish sun itself. And in the evening, sit at a small tapas bar, order patatas bravas, and let the city's energy surround you. They listened. They nodded. Some even closed their eyes as if they were already there. And here's what hit me. I wasn't thinking about English. I was thinking about my message. English wasn't a wall between me and them anymore. it was a bridge. After my talk, one guest came up to me. "You speak so naturally. Were you born in an English-speaking country?" I laughed. "No. I just decided one day that I would stop translating and start living in English." That sentence stayed with me. Start living in English. Because that was the real secret. It wasn't about memorizing every word. It wasn't about being perfect. It was about making English a constant part of my world. My thoughts, my actions, my feelings, my life. That night, I walked home under the warm streetlights, thinking about the journey. The silence where it all began. The first shaky greetings. The real conversations that pushed me forward. The pressure moments that made me stronger. Each step was a brick in the bridge that led me here. And here's what I know now. Anyone can build that bridge. It doesn't matter how old you are, how many times you failed, or how scared you feel right now. Fluency is not a gift. It's a habit. And once you start living in English, you can't go back. If you're watching this, maybe you're still in the silent days. Maybe you're stuck translating in your head. Maybe you've tried and failed before. I want you to know this. I was you. I stood where you stand. I felt the same frustration, the same fear, the same question. Will I ever be fluent? And the answer is yes. Not in theory, not in dreams, but in reality. Because the day you decide to live in English, to make it the air you breathe, the words you think, the voice in your mind, is the day fluency stops being someday and starts being inevitable. So build your bridge, brick by brick, sentence by sentence, mistake by mistake. And one day, you'll stand where I'm standing now. Not just speaking English, but living it. And when that day comes, you won't just feel fluent, you'll feel free. If my story lit even a small fire inside you, if it made you believe that yes, you can be fluent, then don't let that fire die here. Hit subscribe right now. Because this channel isn't just about learning English, it's about transforming your life through it. Every video is another brick in the bridge you're building. And if you stay with me, I promise, one day you'll look back and realize that the English you once dreamed of is now the English you live in. Subscribe now. Let's walk this journey together step by step until fluency is no longer your goal. It's your reality.